Patton stopped the medical truck before the captain finished his first sentence, because the prisoner on the tailgate was not pointing at the guards. He was pointing at the water pump. A wet laundry sack hung from the pump handle, dripping pink water into the mud behind the infirmary. The captain said the transfer had arrived complete. The sick prisoners had been counted. The road delay had been logged. Everything was on the clipboard. But the German prisoner on the tailgate kept raising one shaking finger toward that sack. And when an American medic whispered that 4 names were missing from the ward list, Patton turned just in time to see a young lieutenant carry the sack toward the laundry boiler. Patton barked one order: freeze. The lieutenant stopped with both hands on the sack. The captain stepped forward, still holding the clipboard, and said the laundry had nothing to do with the convoy. Patton did not answer him. He took the sack himself, cut the cord with a pocket knife, and emptied it onto the hood of the truck. Out came 4 cut hospital tags, 2 German prisoner number discs, a blood-stiffened treatment card, and the torn shoulder patch of an American corporal who had been assigned to escort that same truck the night before. The yard went silent so quickly the idling engine sounded too loud. The captain said the corporal had been reassigned. The medic said no one had signed him out. The lieutenant said the tags came from dead men already processed. Then the prisoner on the tailgate hit the metal sideboard with his fist. Once, twice, hard enough to split the bandage on his hand. Patton ordered an interpreter brought over. The prisoner's lips were gray. His breathing was wrong. But he gave one sentence before he collapsed back against the canvas. The truck had stopped before dawn, and the men whose tags were in the sack were still alive when they were taken off. Patton had the truck left exactly where it stood. No one was allowed to move the tires, wash the bed, burn the laundry, close the boiler, or touch the clipboard again. He ordered every man in the yard separated by duty, the captain under one guard, the lieutenant under another, the driver under another, the medical clerk under another. Then he laid the hospital tags, number discs, treatment card, shoulder patch, and clipboard on a folded canvas sheet in the open yard. Not in an office, not inside a tent. In front of the guards, the medics, the prisoners behind the wire, and the officers who had arrived too late to hide their faces. The captain demanded to know why a general was letting enemy prisoners watch American discipline break apart. Patton looked down at the wet sack, then at the pump handle still stained red. He said discipline had already broken apart. He was only making sure the pieces could be counted. The first contradiction was small enough to be dismissed, which made it more dangerous. The convoy report said 38 prisoners had returned from the forward aid station. The ward list said 42 had left. The fuel log showed the truck had been gone 4 hours longer than the route required. The captain called it road damage, a bridge delay, confusion from overloaded medical lanes after the German collapse. The medic pointed to the treatment card from the sack. It was marked with morphine, fever, and a stretcher code. The name matched one of the missing Germans. The time written on the card was after the captain claimed the man had died. Patton ordered the truck searched in front of everyone. Under the rear bench, MPs found a strip of torn canvas soaked with disinfectant, a broken ampoule case, and a folded route slip with one stop circled in blue pencil. It was not a farmhouse. It was not an aid station. It was an abandoned textile mill 2 miles off the approved road. The captain said old route slips stayed in vehicles all the time. The lieutenant said drivers kept them for navigation. The driver said nothing at all. Then the medical clerk made his first mistake. He looked at the boiler. Patton saw it. The boiler fire was still low, but inside the ash box the MPs found half-burned paper twisted into black curls. They pulled the pieces out with bayonet tips and laid them beside the evidence. Most of the writing was gone. One word had survived: inspection. The patrol left for the textile mill before noon. Patton did not wait for a formal inquiry. He sent MPs, a medic, a photographer, and the interpreter who had heard the prisoner speak. He also sent the silent driver from the convoy under guard, because silence in a yard full of evidence was not innocence. It was another locked door. The mill stood beside a dry canal, with shattered windows and bolts of rotten cloth still hanging from iron frames. The front office had dust on the desks, but the loading room did not. Someone had swept it badly. Fresh straw was pressed flat near the wall. 2 stretcher grooves ran across the floor and stopped at the side door. Behind that door, the patrol found the second contradiction. A bloodied canvas strap, 3 empty morphine labels, a military whistle with an American corporal's number scratched inside, and a woman from the village who had watched a truck arrive before sunrise with its headlights covered. She said one officer stood near the doors while sick men were carried inside. She said, one American argued until another officer struck him with the flat of a pistol. She said the truck left lighter than it arrived. When the patrol brought her statement back, the captain tried to laugh at it. Civilians misunderstood war movement, he said. Civilians did not know prisoner classifications. Civilians saw a bandage and invented a crime. Patton asked the woman to point to the officer she had seen near the doors. She did not point at the captain. She pointed at the lieutenant. The lieutenant's face emptied. That was when the clerk broke. Not loudly, not bravely. He simply asked for water and told the MP he had another sheet hidden in his boot. Inside the boot lining was a duplicate ward roster. 4 names had been crossed out in pencil and rewritten under a different category. Not dead, not transferred, unfit for inspection. The handwriting was not the clerk's. The clerk said. The captain ordered him to prepare the clean convoy report before the truck returned. He said headquarters wanted sick prisoners reduced before the visiting team came through. He said the phrase used in the office was not murder. It was tidiness, tidy numbers, tidy wards, tidy reports, tidy lies. Patton ordered the gate logs seized next. The night gate book had been dried too quickly. The paper wrinkled where someone had soaked it, and the ink bled across the page in blue shadows. But the pressure marks remained. A pencil rubbing exposed an entry that had been washed but not erased. 1 medical truck entered at 0310. 1 laundry lorry departed at 0335. No prisoners listed. No medical officer listed. Emergency pass signed by the captain. The captain said the pass was genuine. The gate guard studied it and shook his head. The pass he checked that night had a different signature angle and a different ink color. Somebody had signed the same name twice and trusted darkness to do the rest. Patton placed the pass beside the wet hospital tags. Now the evidence no longer formed a mistake. It formed a route, aid station, camp gate, water pump, boiler, textile mill, laundry lorry. And somewhere beyond that route were 4 men the paperwork had tried to remove before anyone could see them breathe. The darkest turn came just before sunset, when the German prisoner from the tailgate died under guard in the infirmary. The medic wrote the death note himself. He wrote that the prisoner had pointed to the laundry sack while in shock. He wrote that the man's statement was taken before death. He wrote that one of the cut hospital tags found in the sack matched a prisoner removed from the ward as unfit for inspection. Then he signed it in front of Patton. The dead man could no longer testify. But the wet sack had already testified for him. That same hour, an American nurse walked from the infirmary to the yard, carrying an envelope sealed with medical tape. She said the missing corporal had given it to her the previous afternoon. He had told her to open it only if he failed to return from escort duty. Inside was a carbon copy of a complaint. The corporal had written that wounded prisoners were being moved off official lists before inspection. He named the captain. He named the lieutenant, and he named a headquarters major who had ordered officers to lower visible sick counts by any means that would not embarrass the command. The captain stopped arguing when the major's name was read. That silence changed the shape of the case. Until then, the yard had been staring at a convoy. Now it was staring at a system. MPs reached the headquarters building while clerks were preparing the inspection files. The major was at his desk, calm, clean-shaven, and angry that military police had entered without an appointment. He said the convoy problem belonged to field officers. He said prisoner movement was chaotic. He said sick lists changed hourly. Then an MP opened the wrong cabinet and found the right drawer. Inside was a private index of problem witnesses. The dead German prisoner, the missing American corporal, the nurse, 2 medics, a gate guard, and 1 clerk marked nervous. Under the index was a draft instruction telling convoy officers to separate visible medical failures from inspection areas until conditions could be properly categorized. The major said the words were administrative. Patton had the documents carried back to the yard. Not summarized, not typed again. Carried. The original papers were laid on the canvas sheet beside the hospital tags and the captain's pass. The major was brought in under guard, and for the first time the captain looked less like the author of the lie, and more like a man who had discovered his superior, was willing to let him stand in front of it alone. The major ordered the captain not to speak. Patton ordered the captain to step closer to the evidence. The captain broke when the nurse's envelope was placed beside the witness index. He said the major had demanded the camp look clean by inspection morning. He said wounded Germans were to be moved into temporary holding places and returned after the visitors left. He said the American corporal threatened to report the first hidden transfer, so the lieutenant was told to put him on the night vehicle and keep him away from the gate until the inspection passed. The lieutenant heard that and shouted that the corporal was alive when the laundry lorry left. Alive, that one word cut through the yard harder than any confession before it. Patton turned to him. The lieutenant said the lorry had gone to the old brewery cellars near the East Road, where a civilian doctor was being forced to hold overflow patients without names on the camp board. Patton sent the fastest vehicles he had. The brewery had been bombed months earlier. Its upper floor sagged. Its cellar smelled of yeast, whetstone, and sickness. The MPs found the side entrance padlocked from the outside. Inside were 2 German prisoners on straw pallets, a civilian doctor with bruises on one cheek, and the missing American corporal, feverish, bandaged and tied at one wrist to an iron pipe with a length of thelum wire. He was alive, barely, but alive enough to recognize the nurse's envelope when an MP showed it to him. Alive enough to ask whether the complaint had reached Patton. Alive enough, when carried back into the camp yard under a blanket, to lift one shaking hand toward the headquarters major. His voice was almost gone, but the yard heard him. The major ordered the names changed. The reversal was complete. The wet laundry sack was no longer a strange object at the pump. The captain was no longer the top of the story. The missing ward names were no longer clerical confusion. The chain ran upward, from a stained pump handle to a burned boiler, from a burned boiler to a textile mill, from a textile mill to a washed gate log, from a washed gate log to a headquarters drawer, and from that drawer to a hidden cellar where men had been made invisible because their wounds were inconvenient. Patton ordered the major relieved in public. His belt and sidearm were removed in front of the officers who had used his signature as cover and the soldiers who had obeyed his reports as truth. The captain was not released. The lieutenant was not released. The clerk was not forgiven. The driver who had stayed silent was placed under guard until his part was known. Cooperation could become evidence. It could not become innocence. The final irreversible event began before dawn. The rescued corporal gave a sworn statement from a hospital cot with a medic standing beside him, and the nurse holding the paper steady because his hand would not stop shaking. He described the forward aid station, the night stop at the mill, the lorry leaving the gate under a false laundry pass, the brewery cellar, the German prisoner who refused to stop pointing even while he was bleeding through his bandage, and the moment he saw medical tags cut from men who were still breathing. Patton ordered the statement read aloud to the assembled officers. No one was allowed to interrupt. No one was allowed to call it confusion. No one was allowed to hide behind the word inspection again. The corporal's statement named one last place: a records room behind the supply depot, where corrected transport forms were copied and old ward lists were destroyed before morning reports went forward. MPs reached it before the clerks unlocked the front entrance. Inside, the stove was warm. Ash filled the lower tray, but a carbon sheet had slipped behind the grate instead of burning. The page was fragile, blackened at the edges, and clear in the middle. It showed the original ward count: 42 prisoners out, 38 returned, 4 removed from visibility. 1 American escort reclassified as detached duty after he had already disappeared. In a locked metal cabinet beside the stove, They found more than one night's correction. They found cut hospital tags, washed gate slips, fuel issue cards, duplicate passes, and ward lists from 3 previous convoys where sick men had vanished from the board before inspections, then reappeared later as transferred, deceased, or lost in road confusion. The room turned one crime into a pattern. By noon, the evidence was carried back to the yard in sealed crates. Patton ordered the crates open long enough for the officers to see what the reports had tried to swallow. Hospital tags, number discs, carbon copies, passes, fuel cards, a whistle from the missing corporal, and the wet laundry sack that had started with one dying prisoner's finger at the pump. The major said arrests would damage command confidence. Patton answered by having the corrected ward board brought out and nailed over the false one. 4 names were moved back into living witness status. 2 German prisoners, 1 American corporal, and 1 dead German prisoner whose testimony had been preserved because the medic wrote faster than the lie could close around him. Every prisoner transport in the sector was frozen until medical staff, gate guards, and independent clerks matched the lists by hand. No wounded prisoner could be moved after dark without 2 signatures outside the command chain. No officer could alter a prisoner status category without a witness who had seen the body, the cot, or the man walking out. The captain asked to give a full statement against the major. Patton allowed it. He did not free him. The lieutenant was taken to the boiler house and ordered to identify every item he had tried to destroy. He pointed to the sack, the cut tags, the treatment card, the pass. Each answer was written down and signed under guard. The driver admitted he had been told the lorry carried spoiled bedding. Then he admitted he heard a man groan inside. Then he stopped speaking and cried into his hands. No one in the yard cheered. That was not the kind of justice that made men proud. It was the kind that made them check every paper they had ever trusted. By sunset, the major, captain, lieutenant, depot clerk, and driver were loaded into separate vehicles. The evidence truck left first, carrying the carbon sheet, the corporal's statement, the witness index, the cut medical tags, and the wet sack sealed in a crate. The rescued corporal was too weak to stand, so his cot was moved near the infirmary window. From there, he watched the vehicles pull away one by one. Patton did not give the yard a speech. He signed the inquiry order. He returned the nurse's envelope to the case file. Then he looked once more at the water pump, where the mud was still stained under the handle. The report had claimed the convoy was complete. The pump proved it was not. And the moment Patton chose the stain over the signature, the officers who had hidden wounded men stopped being protectors of the army and became part of the evidence.